Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. It started with a sound I wasn't supposed to hear. A click. Not from a lock. From a watch clasp. I was upstairs. She didn't know I was home early. I had a dentist appointment, but it was canceled. I didn't text. Just walked in quietly and dropped my keys on the counter. That's when I heard it. Click. Then whispers. Laughter. A man's voice, too low to recognize, but the kind of laugh you don't fake. I didn't storm down. I didn't yell. I recorded. Yes. I pulled out my phone, walked barefoot to the edge of the stairs, and hit record. 27 seconds of audio. No moaning. No names. Just her soft voice saying, "Don't forget your watch again." He almost noticed. I didn't almost notice. I didn't notice at all. I stood there frozen as I heard the back door open. Footsteps. Another voice. "See you Friday, Tulip." Tulip. She hates tulips. I replayed the audio 5 times in the garage, shaking like a wet animal. Not crying. Not breathing. Just breaking. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye with the same lips that had said his name. Tulip. I smiled. I told her, "You left your wedding ring on the nightstand." She looked startled, then smiled. Oops. Oops. That was the moment I decided. If she could lie with a smile, so could I. And that's how I ended up texting his wife. The woman he forgot to mention when he left his scent on my staircase. Her name was Marin, and she was angrier than I was. Marin replied faster than I expected. I barely had time to pour coffee before her response hit my screen. This isn't the first time, but it might be the last. That single sentence hit harder than any of the audio I'd captured. I stood there, phone in one hand, mug in the other, while the weight of her calm crushed me. She knew about the affair, maybe even accepted it. But something about me contacting her changed her calculation. We started texting, slowly at first. I thought it would be brief, just swapping information, timelines, small proof. But by the end of the day, we'd exchanged more honesty than I'd shared with my wife in years. She told me his name wasn't Marcus. It was Ezra. Ezra Dalton. Married. 2 daughters. Lives 15 minutes from us. Runs some kind of boutique landscaping business. The irony? He builds garden sanctuaries for emotional renewal. I nearly choked on my spit reading that. I sent Marin the audio file. The line about the watch. Her reply came 10 minutes later. He lost that watch 2 weeks ago. Said he left it at the gym. We were both being played. Methodically. Silently. In our own homes. I didn't want revenge at first. Not really. I wanted closure. Proof. A clean exit. But then Clarabelle came home that night and kissed me again. Forehead. Not lips, and said, "How was your day?" I almost said, "Marin says hi." But I didn't. I smiled like a corpse and said, "Quiet." 2 days later, Marin texted me again. "Want to meet? I have something of yours." We agreed on neutral ground. A bookstore cafe. Daytime. Public. Safe. She was sharper than I imagined. Not cold, but contained. Wearing a navy blue blazer like she was interviewing someone. She didn't order coffee. Just sat and placed something on the table. It was the watch. Sleek. Silver. Still ticking. "I found it in his golf bag," she said. "He never plays golf." I held it in my hand like it was a relic from a life I didn't sign up for. Then she leaned forward and asked, "What do you want to do with this?" I said, "Return it." She smirked. "To him," she asked. "No," I said. "To her." We didn't call it revenge. Not out loud. Over text, Marin referred to it as the reset. Like a quiet operation. A strategic correction. We weren't trying to destroy them, just to show them they were never as clever as they thought. Step 1 was timing. Clarabelle always left on Friday nights under the guise of her new wellness book club. I played along for weeks, even asking her what book they were reading. Her answers changed every time. Sometimes she said fiction. Other times she said biographies. She once mentioned a memoir that I Googled later and found out didn't even exist. Ezra, according to Marin, went for runs on Friday evenings. But his fitness tracker showed him mysteriously idle between 7:30 and 9 p.m. Like he vanished into thin air. We knew that's when they met, but we didn't know where. Until Marin figured it out. She tracked a credit card charge to a small, rundown Airbnb on the edge of town. A converted tool shed listed under rustic getaway for artists. Cheap. Out of the way. No cameras. They'd been meeting there for weeks. She showed me the reservation details. Ezra used a fake name. Jonas Pike. Clarabelle must have known. She was the one making the booking from her email. But they were careful. Never texting directly. Always deleting messages. Using voice memos instead of words. Sloppy in theory. Careful in execution. But not careful enough. Friday came, and we put the plan into motion. Marin booked the shed next to theirs. Same host. Same location. We checked in under her name. No questions asked. When we arrived, we waited in silence, watching the gravel lot from behind the shed's warped wooden blinds. At 7:24 p.m., they arrived. He pulled up in a white SUV. She stepped out of the passenger seat wearing a gray hoodie, the one I bought her 2 Christmases ago. I don't know why that detail cut me, but it did. They kissed before they even shut the door. Marin looked at me. I expected fire in her eyes. Rage. But there was just something colder. Final. I'm going in first, she said. I grabbed her wrist. Are you sure? She nodded. I'm done being surprised. She had the watch in her hand. Ezra's watch. The one he swore he'd lost. She walked across the gravel, heels clicking like gunshots in the quiet. I watched through the blinds. She knocked once. Clarabelle opened the door. Saw her. Froze. And then I saw something I never thought I'd see again. Guilt. Real, raw, unpolished guilt, crawling across her face like frost. Marin didn't speak. She just held up the watch. Let it dangle in the doorway like bait. Ezra stepped into view. Shirtless. And when he saw the watch, he said one word. **T. Then she smiled. Turned around. Walked back. No screaming. No slaps. No drama. She got into the shed with me, closed the door, and said, now we wait. We stayed in that dark shed for nearly 20 minutes, saying nothing. I could hear Marin's breathing, sharp, steady, like someone in training for a war that had already started. She didn't cry. Neither did I. Instead, we listened. The walls were thin, poor insulation, and maybe they didn't care anymore. Or maybe they thought we had left. But soon their voices floated through the cracks like smoke. Clarabelle, I thought you said she'd never find out. Ezra, she doesn't care. She just wants attention. Clarabelle, so what was that then? She just walked away like she was the one in control. Ezra, let her play her little games. Then silence. Then bed springs. I felt sick. Not because of the betrayal. That part was already numb. I felt sick because of the way they spoke about us. Like we were footnotes. Reactions. Bystanders to their secret drama. I turned to Marin and said, we could go in. Say everything. Ruin the room, the night, the whole thing. But she shook her head. That's not how they break, she said. Let them sweat. Let them wonder what we're going to do. The silence will eat them faster than yelling ever could. It was cruel, but she wasn't wrong. We left before they did. Quietly, calmly. I drove home like I was returning from a grocery run. I even picked up eggs and toothpaste so I'd have a receipt with a timestamp. She couldn't say I came home early. But when she did come home, around 10:43 p.m., her face had changed. Not scared, just calculated. She walked into the kitchen, took out the milk, and said, book club ran late. I said nothing. I just handed her the eggs. She looked at me. Really looked, like she was searching for something in my eyes. Suspicion. Evidence. A crack. But I'd rehearsed this. I smiled. I left your hoodie on the chair. She nodded. Thanks. Then she went upstairs. I sat alone in the kitchen with a glass of water, staring at nothing, until I got a message from Marin. One sentence. Let's invite them both to dinner. At first, I thought Marin was joking. Dinner? With them? But the longer I stared at her message, the more I realized she wasn't talking about confrontation. She was talking about control. She wanted them trapped, not in a hotel room this time, but in the bright, suffocating honesty of our attention. A calm, deliberate performance. And the truth is, I liked it. So we made the call. I invited Clarabelle to dinner with new clients I had met through work. Told her I'd be cooking. Told her to dress nice, nothing too formal. She smiled and said, oh, a double date. Like it was the first time we'd done something exciting in months. She had no idea. Marin told Ezra it was a real estate couple she wanted him to meet. Said they were looking for someone to redo their yard. She baited him with money. He bid instantly. That Friday, 7 p.m., they walked in. Together. Separately. Coordinated lies arriving from opposite corners of the chessboard. Clarabelle was wearing a soft beige dress, the one I used to love, before I found out what she wore when she left. Ezra showed up in a pale blue button-down, trying to look casual, relaxed. He even brought wine. He looked right at me and said, "It's great to finally meet you, man." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was exactly what I expected. Fake charm, polished teeth, that smooth confidence of a man who thinks he's ahead of everyone in the room. We sat at the table, Marin and I on one side, them on the other. The irony didn't escape me. For people, 2 marriages, no trust. We ate grilled chicken and roasted vegetables. I asked Ezra about his work, pretended I was interested. He talked a lot. Too much. Clarabelle laughed at his jokes. Too loudly. But something shifted mid-dinner. Clarabelle glanced at Marin's necklace, a delicate gold chain with a small tulip charm. Her smile froze. Just for a second. I saw the moment her mind snapped awake. Marin noticed too. She leaned in and said, "It was a gift. From someone who thought tulips meant something." Ezra's fork paused midair. He knew. They both knew. But we didn't confirm anything. Not yet. We just smiled and kept eating. Because nothing makes people panic like knowing they're exposed, but not knowing how or how much. The dinner lasted 42 minutes. No one asked for dessert. When they left, Clarabelle kissed my cheek and said, "They're interesting." I said, "Aren't they?" Then I closed the door, locked it, and finally exhaled. Marin messaged me an hour later. He just asked me if you're a private investigator. I replied, "No, just a husband who learned how to watch quietly." And that was the night I realized something else. They weren't planning their next move anymore. They were wondering when we'd make ours. It didn't take long for the paranoia to set in. Less than 48 hours after the dinner, Clarabelle changed. Not obviously. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But I did. She started watching me more closely. Not lovingly, analytically. Like I was a math problem she couldn't quite solve. I caught her glancing at my laptop screen when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Once, she left her phone charging in the bedroom and walked into the kitchen, then doubled back for it after 10 seconds, pretending to grab her water. She never used to care about leaving it unattended. But now, every device was locked. Every text notification was suddenly silenced. Her privacy had turned militant. The best part? I didn't say a word. I just started humming in the kitchen. Random songs. Nothing she could place. And every time I caught her watching me from behind, I'd smile a little too long when I turned around. Meanwhile, Marin and I kept our messages short and encrypted. Not because we had anything romantic going on, we didn't. But we both understood something vital. When liars feel watched, they implode on their own. No need to pull the trigger when they're already building the noose. Then came the real sign of unraveling. Clarabelle asked me, completely out of nowhere, if I thought trust can survive a rough patch. I pretended not to understand. She tried to frame it like a general conversation, one of those vague, late-night talks married people sometimes have to keep the air clean. But I could see the tremble in her hand as she poured wine. She was testing me, probing for leaks, wondering if I knew. She still didn't realize I had watched the whole movie. She thought I might have just seen a preview. So I gave her one. "I think trust dies in silence," I said. Not because of what's said, but what isn't. She stared at me for a long second, then nodded slowly and drank her wine like it tasted wrong. I didn't push. Because the very next day, I got a voicemail. From Ezra. Blocked number. Voice trembling. A 17-second message. "Hey man, I don't know what game you're playing, but whatever this is, just talk to me. Be a man. This isn't healthy. For any of us." No name. No details. Just panic wrapped in bravado. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He'd cracked. And the best part? He didn't even know how much we actually had. Because Marin had just told me something new. Something I hadn't expected. Something not even Clarabelle knew she knew. A bank account. Joint. Hidden. Opened 6 months ago under a different last name. And the person who signed the documents with Ezra wasn't Marin. I didn't expect money to be involved. Not like this. Affairs usually burn on passion and lies, not spreadsheets and transfers. But when Marin sent me the bank documents, it felt like the whole story had just shifted genres. This wasn't just betrayal. It was planning, future-proofing. And Clarabelle's name was right there. Not her legal one, though. She'd used her maiden name and a fake middle initial. Enough to slide under radar, but not enough to hide from someone who knew what to look for. The account was opened 6 months ago. Deposits every 2 weeks. $1,300, $2,100, sometimes more. All labeled under vague terms like consulting or vendor payout. But there was no business. No invoices. Just quiet cash movement between Ezra and Clarabelle. It was laundering in plain sight. Not criminal, maybe, but secretive. Protected. Intentional. I stared at the document for a long time, and I realized something cold and unshakable. This affair wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't the usual impulsive disaster two people stumble into. It was structured. They were building a life behind our backs, not just in beds, but in banks. And that's when I stopped wanting to expose them. I wanted to interrupt them. Marin agreed. She'd already spoken to a lawyer. Off the record, nothing filed yet. She didn't want divorce. Not yet. What she wanted was leverage. Ammunition. Ezra had no idea she knew about the account. And Clarabelle? She still thought I was 3 steps behind, lost in subtle comments and confused silences. But the game was over. We decided to escalate. Marin scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor, one Ezra had contacted 6 weeks earlier to discuss discreet premarital structuring. She pretended to be his assistant, used his full name and business card, which she'd snapped a photo of months ago. The advisor sent over a pre-meeting packet. That's where we saw it. Their plan. They'd written it all down. A post-divorce relocation to Arizona. A shared LLC for restoration landscaping and outdoor therapy experiences. A timeline of 6 months to dissolve their respective marriages amicably. I laughed out loud reading it. Amicably. They were planning a clean exit, while lying to our faces and banking stolen intimacy. Clarabelle must have felt the air changing. She started cooking again, her version of peacekeeping. Left my favorite beer in the fridge. Put on music she hadn't played in years. Even suggested we take a weekend trip, just the 2 of us. Too late. I told her I had a work project due. She didn't push. But that night, I saw her standing in the hallway after midnight, just watching me sleep. She didn't say a word. When I opened my eyes, she flinched like she'd been caught trespassing in her own house. I closed my eyes again and waited for the sound of her footsteps walking away. I didn't hear them, which meant she hadn't moved. The night Clarabelle stood in the hallway, just watching me sleep, I didn't say anything. I didn't even flinch. I just waited for her to decide who she was going to be when the sun came up. She didn't come back to bed that night. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen with puffy eyes and a mug she hadn't touched. She looked at me and whispered, "Is there something I should know?" I could have unloaded everything. The bank account, the Airbnb, the recordings, the dinner, the tulip necklace, Ezra's voicemail, all of it. But I didn't. I just sat down across from her, looked her in the eyes, and said, "I know." She closed her eyes. No denial. No bargaining. Just quiet collapse. I told her the full truth, that I wasn't angry anymore. That I had stopped being heartbroken the moment I realized she wasn't my wife anymore. Not really. She had become someone else. Someone I couldn't love because she didn't love me. And that was okay. We didn't scream. We didn't fight. We made coffee, and then we started sorting through papers like business partners dividing assets. She left 3 days later. Quietly. No scene. She didn't take the hoodie. And Ezra? Well, Marin told him everything. No warning. Just dropped the documents on his desk and said, "We're done." He begged, swore he'd change, tried to spin it, but it didn't matter anymore. She kept the house. She got full custody. He walked away looking like a man who just realized he was never the main character in his own affair. It's been 6 months now. I still talk to Marin sometimes. Not romantically, just 2 people who survived the same storm, each building something new. She's dating again. Says it feels strange to be trusted by someone. I know what she means. As for me, I'm not bitter. Not anymore. I got my peace back. My silence. And most of all, my clarity. Because when my wife cheated with someone else's husband, I didn't just get revenge. I got perspective. I got stronger. And in a strange way, I got closure. Like I said in the beginning. She cheated on me, so I took her lover's wife. The best deal I ever made. If you've ever uncovered a secret you weren't supposed to find, whether it was a phone, a voice message, or something way worse, let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves a quiet revenge arc done right. See you next time on Reddit Confessions.